Public hearing.
The meeting.
I'm sorry?
Now it's recording. Okay.
Oh. Okay. Good evening again, everyone. This is the Regional EMS Council of New York City's public hearing on the Glen Oaks Volunteer Ambulance Service expansion CON application. Tonight, our ambulance committee and many REMSCO members are here to listen to public comment on the application that has already been reviewed and deemed complete by the Regional EMS Council. I'd like to introduce Frank Shorn. He is our hearing officer. He has been a hearing officer several times before, and he will be leading this meeting. The way we run the meeting is we already have speakers who are presenting for the applicant, and then speakers who are in opposition or in support of the application. Everyone will have a chance to speak as long as they're on the speakers list. And the hearing officer does have the right to allow other people to speak if he thinks it's okay. He will limit your time depending on our time here in the meeting. And does anyone have any questions? Okay, I'm sorry, who's that?
That's me, Dave McNansky. Henry, our president of Glen Oaks, he's having trouble logging on right now, but he's working on it. I'm not sure if he's in the waiting room or not.
Joe will check on that.
Give us 1 second.
Okay, so once the hearing is over, the hearing officer has 10 days to produce a report with his recommendation, which will be submitted to our ambulance committee and regional council for consideration and vote. The hearing officer only gives a recommendation. The actual decision and recommendation to the state is done by the regional council. Our regional council meeting will be held on November 17th, and that's when we will be having our vote with regards to this application. And that's it. Frank, can I hand it over to you at this point? Do you want to get started?
Sure. Thanks, Maureen, and welcome everyone. Thank you and good evening for being here tonight. I understand that that some of us and all of us have had some level, perhaps, of difficulty with tech. So I know Marie's having some issues with getting her video. My laptop is giving me fits, so I'm it's a little bit sub-quality coming to you through an iPad. So I understand that that Henry Earhart is having some difficulty. I do want to do a little bit of office keeping and housekeeping before we start. The first thing I mentioned Henry, I think probably almost all of us probably know Henry, some of us on a first name basis. I've known Henry going back for many years. I am a former volunteer in volunteer EMT in Glendale. And so I've known Henry maybe going back 1995, 1996. And I've seen him through the years. Occasionally, I probably have not had a conversation with him even from the hello, how are you kind of level for about 2 or 3 years. So I feel it's necessary for me to say that. And I also want to make a very clear statement that knowing Henry does not hold any power for or against the application by Glen Oaks. If anyone has any questions on that issue and my inherent fairness, I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you may have on it. And I'll stop for there. All right. So if you know you come up with something and you do have a question before we go much into substance, please let me know. Joe Ranieri, are the participants here able to unmute themselves, or are you in control of the mute function totally?
So participants do have the ability to unmute themselves. I'm going to let 3 participants in and ask them to identify themselves before we continue.
Okay.
Just give me 1 moment. So we have some individuals that are joining by phone. So one individual I recognize, that is Nancy Benedetto.
Everyone
The
recognized.
individual with the phone number 917-407-8495, please unmute yourself and identify yourself.
Hey, Joe, it's Allison from Greater New York. I'm
Hi,
having a
Allison.
lot of, hi, I'm sorry, and I don't want to distract time. I know people are busy and it's after hours. I'm having a really hard time to get on the Zoom, but if you're okay with me being on the phone, I'm fine doing it that way.
Yep, you can be on the phone. I see your number is ending in 2467. So I'm just gonna I just need to make sure we have everyone that's on the line identified.
Okay, great. That's me.
Yep, we got you. So again, the person with the phone number ending in 8495. I've asked you to unmute yourself. Please identify yourself, or you're going to be moved back into the waiting room. Okay. Put them back in the waiting room. Person with the phone number 718-986-8751. Please unmute yourself, identify yourself, please.
Hi, this is Steve Kamiatek. 8751 is the last 4 digits of my phone number.
I'm sorry, what's your name again?
Steve Kamiatek.
Okay.
Joe, I just want to say that we have a Miss Carissa. I'm not sure how to pronounce your last name. You're muted.
Pramadka.
Ramaka, she is our stenographer
Thank you.
for tonight. And please, before you speak, say your name every time. I've provided her with a list of all the names of everyone that's supposed to be here, but it'll make her job easier taking our record. Thank you.
Okay, so right now everyone that's in is identified. Anybody else that's not, I put into the waiting room, and I will verify their identity before allowing them back in.
All right, that was Joe Ranieri. This is Frank Shorn, SCHORN. A strong and hearty welcome to our stenographer. And thank you for your patience. You're probably going to be doing this on audio and not watching us. Am I right, ma'am?
I'm going to try and watch, but it would be very helpful if everyone just stated their name before they spoke, because I don't see probably everyone that's on the line on my screen.
Okay, I'm going to do my best to identify myself. You might get sick of my voice real fast, but I'll try and identify myself. I'm going to ask the speakers here tonight to do the same.
Thank you.
A couple more pieces of business. You're very welcome, and thanks for being here tonight. The plan that I would like to have is we're going to have probably blocks of 5 minutes. The applicant, I'm going to give a little bit more time to. The representative from Greenberg Tri-Rig, you're going to be presenting on behalf of the applicant, and that's Mr. Berlin. Am I right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and yeah, I assume so, because you're the only person here in the room who has a tie. I opted not to. Feel free to join or not join with that, Mr. Berlin, but you're very welcome here tonight.
Thank you very much.
Would you feel you're going to need more than 5 minutes to?
The plan here is that I was just going to give a brief opening, very brief, and then turn it over to Mr. Earhart, who would be giving the full opening statement. I'm a little concerned that he's not on the line yet.
He just joined.
He's on the line.
Okay, great.
I am here now. Sorry.
All right, great. Okay, I
Having
had
some
not.
technical
I was scrolling through the from the gallery view to see it, but there. But I think the plan would be that I would just give a very brief statement, and then if you would allow it, I would reserve time to make a closing statement on behalf of the applicant.
Absolutely. And I'd like to try and see if we can try and do it in if at all. if we can kind of have questions for speakers, that we try and keep the questions appropriate. If the proponents for the application have multiple speakers, and I assume that there will be, I'd like to see if we can try and avoid cumulative information. So if stuff has already been presented, information has been shared, that it not be repeated. The goal is not to introduce new material at this hearing. It's to identify and point to material contained in the application. So for those who know this and who've done this a couple of times or more, and some of you may be far more experienced in these things than I, but I've been very fortunate to be doing this. I don't know, maybe probably less than 10, but maybe around 10 times or so. We have a certificate of need, and the process is the process, and the standards are the standards. And while it would seem, well, why wouldn't we want another ambulance, especially in the days of COVID, especially when it's it could be a potentially life-saving presence in someone's life. We're limited to what the New York State Department of Health requires us to do, and we need to have the applicant, Glen Oaks, make its case, not beyond a reasonable doubt. That's a criminal standard, but it's more likely than not. Preponderance of the evidence, but the applicant, Glen Oaks, has the burden of proof. And that, even so, I come from a volunteer ambulance background, and I've had many years connected with Central Park Medical Unit. And as I mentioned earlier, my connections to Glendale when I began, and that's where I believe I first met Mr. Earhart. That all being said, the burden is on the applicant, and Glen Oaks needs to prove. And it's not as simple as it appears. And the last application that I had, I think was last November, was finally finalized. After appeals and decisions and whatnot, probably August or so of this year. So it gets complicated. I will ask that we keep it civil. We may know each other. Please keep it civil. Don't make it on a personal level. And let's see if we can all take the high road tonight. I'm going to be very respectful of people's times. I don't want to list a whole bunch of rules. I'd rather be a little bit more organic and forward thinking as far as this goes. But if there are issues, we will address them. If somehow there's a feeling that fairness is not happening, I need to know it, and I'll try and correct it. If it's happening, it would certainly be inadvertent. My goal is to have this a fair public hearing, and that includes people who are not necessarily the people who are in direct interest in this situation, the Glen Oaks and the other volleys who appeared to be in opposition. I want to hear. I have an open mind. I have not made any decision. My decision is purely recommendation. Even once I make up my mind, and there's a lot of esteemed and intelligent and experienced people on both the ambulance committee and on the regional council. So I'm very happy for them to be there. Hi to Nancy. I understand Nancy's in the audience. Nancy Benedetto. Thank you again to Marie. Thank you to Joe. Thank you to the rest of the REMSCO staff that's here tonight to make it all happen. And that being said, I'm ready to get the ball rolling. Any preliminaries, any questions, any issues before we begin? All right. So questions will come from the ambulance committee that are here tonight. Who's here from the ambulance committee, just so I have an idea?
Marie, would you like to give a breakdown of that?
Most of the individuals here tonight are from either the ambulance committee or the regional council. Aside from our speakers and our presenters who you have on the presenters list.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, so I'm not
So-
seeing anybody here that doesn't belong here.
All right, so just so I'm clear on who, so Mr. Berlin, you expect to speak, Mr. Earhart, you expect to speak in favor. Who else you expect here to be speaking in favor on your behalf?
So on the list, which was sent in, is Susan
Yep.
Seinfeld, Luis Greco, Joe, I'm not sure if it's going to be Joe Arzolano or Eileen Miller. I'm not sure which one is here. Who's going to speak.
Okay.
And Charles Silverstein are the people that were listed as our speakers.
All right, great, thank you. And are they all here? Do we know?
I believe so.
Okay, and in opposition, we have people who signed up in opposition who are already present.
Darn.
Yes, it looks like it. I mean, I don't mean to speak
Yeah.
for them, but the names of the people on the list appear to be in the Zoom
All right.
call.
Frank,
I'm-
I'm going to go over the list and I'll double check right now.
Okay, just so I'm clear, because I apologies, I'm using if it was using my laptop, it would be a piece of cake. Running back and forth on my iPad is less easy.
I know that Sue Seinfeld is saying she's having some difficulty getting into the meeting. And I know the Community Board 11 folks have a meeting tonight that came up with a city agency. So I don't know if they're going to be able to join us.
Okay, thank you. But since we have enough folks over here, I'm willing to get things going. Again, I want to be respectful of your time. I know we're already at 20 minutes after the hour. So if we can, Mr. Berlin, do you want to head us off and
Yeah,
make your-
just briefly, as I said, I'm representing the Glen Oaks Volunteer Ambulance Corps here, and as is detailed in the organization's thorough application, there's a clear public need for a community-based volunteer ambulance corps servicing these Bayside and Oakland Gardens communities. Moreover, Glen Oaks is perfectly positioned through its resources and experience to provide those services. I think that anyone who reads through the application will see the great detail that was put in, and that each of the criteria which are supposed to be evaluated are amply met. On the details of that, I think it's better to come from Mr. Earhart, who is the president of the Glen Oaks Volunteer Ambulance Corps, and I think his opening statement will address and summarize the application and lead to any questions that you may have. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Earhart.
Okay.
Thank you. Good evening, Hearing Officer Sean and members of the Ambulance Committee of the Regional Emergency Medical Services Council.
Mr. Earhart, if you could you spell your name just for the
Sure.
stenographer?
EHRHARDT.
Thank you.
And members of the Ambulance Committee of the Regional Emergency Medical Services Council for New York City. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight about the Glen Oaks Volunteer Ambulance Corps application to expand its primary operating area. The Glen Oaks Volunteer Ambulance Corps was founded in 1973, and for approaching 5 decades, we have continuously been providing community-based EMS services to the Northeast, Queens community of North Belrose, Floral Park, Glen Oaks, New Hyde Park, North Shore Towers in Queens Community District 13, and Oakland Gardens, which some people also refer to as Southern Bayside in Queens Community District 11. Glen Oaks VAC is a participant in the Regional Volunteer EMS Mutual Aid Plan and the Regional EMS Council of New York City FDNY EMS Mobilization Plan. The Bayside Community Volunteer Ambulance Corps has effectively not been providing service for half a decade, and over 2 years ago, the New York State Department of Health Bureau of EMS revoked its ambulance operating certificate. Prior to this, numerous outreach efforts and offers of assistance were made by GOVAC, other neighboring volunteer ambulance corps, as well as by Community Board 11, local officials, and the Department of Health Bureau of EMS staff. These efforts went unanswered and their leadership was non-responsive. The 40,000 plus residents in this area deserve better. Glen Oaks VAC with 70 plus EMTs, 10 paramedics, 30 dispatchers, and 24 U Squad members is ready and quite able to immediately provide service to this area now. Currently, the Glen Oaks Volunteer Ambulance Corps is requesting to expand its area into the Bayside proper neighborhood of Community Board 11. The proposed area is immediately adjacent to our existing New York State DOH approved operating community of Oakland Gardens within Queens Community Board 11. As explained in our application and supporting appendices, we believe there remains a need for a community volunteer EMS agency in this area, and that GOVAC is best able to meet that need. Currently, basic life support 911 ambulance resources are placed in outlying areas in the community to serve a larger geographical area. Given the high volume of calls in other areas, those ambulances are often dispatched into other communities, leaving some gaps in local availability. Additionally, advanced life support units deployed to the field often must travel from areas in CB13, 105 precinct, CB7, 109 precinct, as well as CB8, the 107 precinct based on availability. Our ALS, BLS combination capabilities would provide additional advanced life support as well as BLS EMS resources to the community at no expense to the municipality or community. We also see that in fiscal year 2020, end-to-end combined overall response time for the 911 system by ambulances and fire companies to life-threatening medical emergencies increased to 9 minutes and 31 seconds citywide average. Make no mistake, we are fortunate to have the capable and competent 911 EMS system led by FDNY EMS and its dedicated officers, staff, managers, and personnel, along with voluntary hospital partners who typically handle 3,000 plus calls a day. We are also fortunate for the robust commercial EMS sector, which move hundreds and sometimes thousands of patients a day amongst various healthcare facilities. The city and its residents also benefit immensely when there is a robust community volunteer EMS agency dedicated to the community, which helps to increase availability and reduce EMS response time, which GOVAC can do in the proposed area in terms of the size of New York City and even Queens County. This proposed expansion is but a small area. As such, GOVAC expansion into this area will not have a detrimental impact on the current EMS system or existing services, all who have vastly larger operating areas and EMS delivery models, but it will result in positive effects for the local community. There are a variety of potential modalities that can be considered and explored regarding our emergency response and response times to this expanded area. They range from equipping our members who live in or near the Bayside area as first responders, to stationing an ambulance in or closer to the area. This includes obtaining real estate to house vehicles and crews to make them even more accessible to this community. We also have indicated that in accordance with pre-existing regional mutual aid agreements, we are also open to having our dispatchers and dispatch center continue to refer calls to our projected new adjoining volunteer ambulance agencies when we may not be available or impeded by unusual circumstances. This would add to our existing mutual aid partners in the area. New York City is, after all, a highly diverse and highly dynamic place with 8.5 million residents and an additional 2 to 3 million workers and visitors present on any given day. A city that draws immigrants, and sadly and tragically, as we particularly know, a city that is a target. As such, there is, in a sense, a state of no normal in New York City. We now have seen SARS, swine flu, plane crashes, major MCIs, H1N1, and now COVID-19. Environmentally, New York City sees devastating heat waves, cold spells, blizzards, tropical storms, and hurricanes. Some of these events can and have happened in the same year. Given the projections for another potential COVID-19 spike, Glen Oaks can help provide urgently needed added service now during a critical period. In addition to enhancing ambulance availability and reducing response times in its area, Glen Oaks has also been active in virtually every FDNY EMS volunteer sector activation. While we have dedicated a unit to these activations, we've also maintained unit coverage in our community. We've been able to do so because we have a good membership base and a sound financial footing. For sure, we would like to have more members, and we continue to welcome interested individuals. As an EMS agency, we constantly strive to maintain the highest quality of care delivered to our patients. Glen Oaks VAC is proud to have a robust credentialing and orientation program, preparing every new provider to meet our vigorous requirements. We have transitioned all records from paper to electronic, ensuring the utmost security and compliance. We offer regular in-house training and call review provided by our members who are New York State certified instructor coordinators, as well as guest lecturers and our agency medical director. We maintain a regular QA/QI program with regular reviews of patient encounters and provide constructive feedback to crews. GOVAC is also a participant in the West Queens Volunteer Ambulance Association QA/QI group. Additionally, periodic call review sessions are hosted at our headquarters, moderated by our medical director. Glen Oaks is actively involved in the community and regularly engages and updates local entities and officials on our work and activities. We are very pleased to have broad and solid support from government entities, the local community planning agency, community organizations, and elected officials. Letters of support in our expansion range from the area's U.S. Congresswoman, Queensborough President, the local state senator, the assembly person, the city council members, Community Board 11, and the area's active local Bayside Civic Group. We also have included letters from FDNY EMS and other EMS services. I also want to touch on some vital services that community volunteer EMS provides that are often overlooked. Agencies such as ours serve as critical entry points to local youth into the EMS profession that often lead into other medical and emergency services fields. This is a positive activity that has a profound impact on countless young lives in New York City. We have heard back from scores of EMTs, paramedics, nurses, physician assistants, and physicians about how their membership and activity with their community volunteer EMS agency changed their lives and gave them a new career path that they would not have otherwise anticipated. Another important need that we fulfill is providing medical aid EMS standby at scores of local community events. These events are often too small to be on the radar of larger systems or technically don't require such services. Still, they draw hundreds of people and are vital to life in the communities throughout New York City. We cover many of these on a pro bono basis for small nonprofit groups by community VACs all over the city, and we are one of them. There are many such events in the Bayside area that would also benefit from these services. I can tell you firsthand that over the years serving at such events, Glen Oaks has, within critical minutes of an occurrence, treated several cases of anaphylactic reaction and other serious medical and trauma cases. I also want to touch on current realities and in the environment in which community volunteer EMS faces today. If you've been involved in EMS leadership, management, or administration in a serious manner in the last decade and have not been keeping current, then you know the challenges. I say the last decade because the challenges facing EMS and the work of EMS today are vastly different than they were just a short time ago. This is particularly true for volunteer community EMS agencies. Volunteer community EMS sector agencies find a lot of challenges in today's world, from financial, membership, community expectations, as well as leadership development. No longer is it realistic for small community EMS agencies to survive if they continue to live in their silos. These agencies need a new approach to assure long-term sustainability, a larger base to draw members and contributions, and to assure that they can maintain a level of clinical experience for their members. Joint ventures, collaborations, operational arrangements, and yes, consolidations and mergers are all things that need to be seriously thought of and in many cases pursued. Communities and agencies can benefit from these approaches and from enlightened leadership that is willing to keep an open mind. At Glen Oaks, we're committed to serving our communities and to helping build and strengthen and sustain the community volunteer EMS system in Northeast Queens. We are open to working with our neighboring agencies on joint ventures, enhancements of mutual aid, and collaborative efforts and arrangements to achieve that goal. Thank you for your time and consideration this evening and during the process that moves forward.
All right, thank you, Mr. Earhart. And I found it very informative, and I also was spurred on to have a number of questions. So if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you a few questions in no particular order, unfortunately, but just so I can follow them through. I know you mentioned your service area existing is in the far eastern part of Queens. Do you have any coverage in Nassau County, or is your service only within the borough of Queens?
No, we're only in the borough of Queens, but I think you raised something interesting, and let me touch on that. The zip code lines here do not follow political boundaries. So if you look at the very easternmost portion of our area that touches Nassau County, part of it is zip code 11040, which is often addressed as New Hyde Park. A little sliver of that is actually in Queens County and is usually incorporated and called the Glen Oaks community. Same time, if you look at the western end on the western side of Little Neck Parkway, north of Union Turnpike, that area is zip code 11426. Again, part of the overall larger greater Glen Oaks community, but it is sometimes addressed as Belrose or North Belrose. But we are all in Queens County. We don't cross the boundary into Nassau.
Do you have any mutual aid agreement with Nassau County or any Nassau County agencies?
We do not, although we have directly called Manhasset Lakeville on occasion, and we've heard from them on occasion because obviously we share a common border along Lakeview Road, and often there are incidents that occur in that community. So we do have interaction with them.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned that towards the end of your presentation that joint ventures and collaborations and mergers may need to, I'm not being precise in my language, but may need to happen in the current environment. And I think that I think there may be some concern that well, I have a question. Is an expansion of GoVac placing a risk of a volunteer ambulance corps getting too big?
Well, if
In
you
your
look-
situation, would you be stretching more than you can handle?
No, I don't believe so. I believe we have the resources and capabilities to handle that. Let me just take care of my my phone here.
Thank you.
If you look at other agencies, and some right near us, Jamaica Estates, for example, Queens Village, Whitestone, they have all areas that are of comparable size to what we would become if we were granted this area. Our area, in fact, currently right now is one of the smaller service areas in the city. If you compare it to Bedford-Stuyvesant or Bravo or Valley Hart on Staten Island, you know, we're one of the smaller guys.
If following on that same kind of train of thought, would you have enough resources to go from a relatively condensed area and extend into Bayside, which would be a substantial increase in service area? Do you have enough downtime / resources / ambulances
We have 3 ambulances right now, so we are all late model in excellent shape. We have a solid base of volunteers. As I said, I was very pleased with the service we provided during COVID. We not only entered the 911 activation, we also, throughout the entire period, while we had service a unit in the 911 system, we had a unit in the community, also continuing to serve the community for direct calls.
I would just like to add that, you know, in putting in this application, there was a very careful analysis of the resources that the organization, sorry, this is Michael Berlin, counsel, of the resources that the organization had. And after that evaluation, we felt very comfortable that this expansion would not tax our resources or would be any detriment to services of the people who would rely on us.
I think it's also important to note that if you look at our area, while it looks big, a significant chunk of it is parkland. And, you know, so that gives the geography a little bit of a deceiving look in terms of that. Population-wise, we would still, with the expanded area, be under the population. We would have less people than, say, Bravo, less people than Ridgewood, less people than Queens Village, less people than Jamaica Estates. So population-wise, it's, I believe, very manageable. And size-wise, as I said, it still would not be the largest volunteer agency in New York City by any means.
All right, thank you. I have a question, and I don't know the history as well as perhaps the neighbors in Eastern Queens. I live in Western Queens, and Bayside, the applicant has presented information. I think it's not contradicted that there is no ambulance certificate for the Bayside Volunteer Organization. To what extent would GOVAC be willing to support a rejuvenated Bayside organization, should that ever come to be? Would you help provide service? And if the organization comes in and says, hey, you know, Bayside for the Baysiders, would that be something that GOVAC would be willing to say, hey, okay, we're going to cede the responsibility of ambulance, volunteer ambulance service to that community if they were to reconstitute
The one thing I would say in just answering that is that's a very hypothetical situation. For more than 2 years, there's been an opportunity to put in an application and to be able to, for other organizations to do that. Whatever happens in the future, I mean, we'll certainly consider, but the truth of the matter is that in front of us right now is a community which does not have these services and an organization that is ready and able and has the resources to do that. Obviously there's so many different permutations and other things and possibilities in the future. We certainly will look at things in the future, but I don't think it's relevant. And obviously we want to answer your questions, but I think that the real question is whether or not we are qualified to do this and whether we will be able to meet this need for the community. What happens in the future, we can obviously evaluate at that point, but I think it's very hard to answer that question because of it, because we don't know what form or where it'll be or the stability or who will be running or any of those questions that are there.
Thank you. I'm going to one further question. I'm going to open up to the ambulance committee and anyone on the regional council that wishes to speak to Mr. Earhart and Mr. Berlin. Can you speak to any direct FIDNY support of your application?
There is a letter in the application from the fire department, which is generally supportive, I would say.
Okay. All right. All right. I'm going to reserve any possible questions perhaps till later.
I'll stay around for as long as the hearing is open. So if you want to go to other people, I don't want to hold them up.
Not a problem. I'm going to ask if anyone has any questions for me, either Mr. Earhart or Mr. Berlin on the application.
This is Jim Downey. I have a question or two.
Go ahead.
On the application narrative, the proposed area of service expansion is different from the map that is included as Appendix A, proposed operating area expansion area map. Specifically, the northwest corner in the narrative would be Francis Lewis Boulevard and 26th Avenue. However, in Appendix A, the map, it shows going north on Francis Lewis Boulevard, then Utopia Parkway, then 26th Avenue. So there is a slight discrepancy there, and it would leave out a triangle of residential areas, which would not be covered by any volunteer ambulance corps. So I would propose that the northern bound, the map be adjusted to show 26th Avenue and Francis Lewis Boulevard as intersecting.
Thank you, Jim. Our intent was to mirror the boundary of Community Board 11, which I believe is 26th Avenue. So, because we know that the State Department of Health has been generally taking the position that we shouldn't just draw lines on the map, we should use some identifiable boundary. So the identifiable boundary that we tried to follow on the northern end was the Community Board 11 boundary line. If we need to adjust that slightly to in fact do that, certainly we would be amenable to doing that.
Yeah, to the extent that there is any error on the map, we're certainly happy to correct it. It certainly wasn't our intention to sort of have that. And as was said, we tried to put in the map that was matching the previous boundaries. So, but we're happy to make that slight supplement if necessary.
All right, this, again, Jim Downey. My other issue with the northern boundary is on the eastern side. Again, the narrative is showing 26th Avenue to the north and Cross Island Parkway to the east. However, the map shows 26th Avenue going to Bell Boulevard and then a jog north to 24th Avenue, continuing on to the Cross Island Parkway.
That's correct, Jim. That is the boundary of Community Board 11, and in fact, that is the boundary of the Bayside Volunteer Ambulance Corps pursuant to a map from one of their fundraising drives some years ago.
The 24th Avenue versus 26th Avenue borderline. I believe Bay Terrace Country Club is on 24th Avenue. The parking lots are north, and the pool and clubhouse itself is south. I know Bay Community has serviced the country club for many years in the past. Is that going to be an issue in the future between the two squads if we go by 24th Avenue versus 26th Avenue?
I would be more than happy if we obtain this area. I'd be more than happy to sit down with Bay Community and, work cooperatively to resolve any issue like that.
It would probably be easier right now just to use 26th Avenue as the northwest and northeast boundary. Again, that's a suggestion.
I appreciate
clarification
it.
Right now.
Yeah, we don't want to vary from the community board line because that's what the State Department of Health is looking for. But I'm happy to work with our colleagues in Bay Community to resolve some issue like that. I think that's a resolvable issue between the two agencies.
Who would like? I want to quickly chime in on the map. Sorry, this is Dave McAtanty from Glen Oaks. The 26th Avenue doesn't go all the way east to the Cross Island Parkway. So again, we're sticking to that CV11. Sorry, I'm looking at the map on my computer. So we're sticking to that CV11 border that goes 24th Avenue, heads right into that Bay Terrace Country Club that goes directly to the Cross Island Parkway. That's why that map was created that way.
26th Avenue does curve into 27th Avenue, and that goes to the Cross Island or near it.
It becomes Little Neck Boulevard. It's called over there, right by Zorba's Auto Care.
Hi, good evening. Scott Orlansky here. I'm sorry to be the stick in the mud here. I think everybody's had a long day. I think these little technicalities with the map can be worked out, and they don't really pose any bearing on the public hearing or the need. If for some reason the application is approved, we can work out the technical details afterwards. That's just my humble opinion in the hopes of moving this thing forward.
This is Frank Schorner. I'm going to jump in. Scott, thank you. I'm going to ask if there are any particular need to revisit your map. I'm going to ask the applicant to look over it carefully and take care of whatever needs to be done. I don't think we need to know the minutia to this level. I certainly don't need to do it. The Department of Health may, but please, I'm going to ask that you kind of, if you need to have a de minimis, a real minor kind of a change to the application, just to clarify, not a change, but a clarification of what the service area may or may not be, that it be presented to the regional council, who will include that if appropriate if it's minor and not a new part of the application in the application itself.
Yeah, we're happy to adjust. We're happy to adjust as needed, and I don't think it bears on the application, but we're certainly happy. We're certainly happy to adjust as needed. We'll take a look at it afterwards, but I agree, it's not something that I think should affect the application one way or another.
I tend to disagree because this was a major concern at the last public hearing on an operating area.
All right, just 1 second, Jim. So we had two voices. We had Michael Berlin, who was speaking, and the very last person besides myself, Shorn, was Jim Downey, D-O-W-N-E-Y. We had Mr. Mekanats. I'm going to do it phonetically. Mekanatsky for the transcription. M-E-K-E-T-A-N-S-K-Y. All right, and first name Dave, D-A-V-E. Mr. Downey, go ahead.
This was a major issue that cropped up at the last certificate of need application, a discrepancy between the map submitted and the narrative submitted. So it should be addressed. It can also be addressed at the regional council when it's voted upon, and we suggest the wording with the boundaries in it.
Excuse me, this is Marie.
We'll adjust, we'll take care of that.
Another question, last question from me. Is there any consideration being given to enlarging the name of Glen Oaks Volunteer Ambulance to address that it's a much larger area now?
Well, that will be something that we would look at, assuming once the approval is given, that may well be something we look at.
All right, Jim, before you go any further, Marie Diglio, Regional EMS Council Executive Director, would like to say something. Marie.
Hi, I just wanted to address the territory. When the Regional Council does consider the application and make a vote, the motion will have to include the updated territory, which would be inclusive of the expanded territory. And at that time, we can clarify all the territories, then that's the way it will go up to the Department of Health.
Okay, thank you.
Jim Downey, that's all my questions.
Jim, thank you. Others present from the ambulance committee that have questions?
Frank, this is Joe Ranieri. May I make a suggestion?
Please.
When opening up for questions to prevent people from talking over one another, I would recommend you have them use the raise hand function that is part of the program. So if they are online, they can click on the button to raise the hand and you can choose which person to recognize. If you are on the phone, you can utilize the phone instructions. So if you are joined by phone, you can also use the raise hand by hitting #9 or *9 to raise your hand. And you can hit *6 to mute and unmute yourself. This way we don't have to worry about individuals talking over one another and you can maintain control of the hearing.
For those of you may need to, it's usually under the More button on your Zoom dashboard. I know it's on mine, and you can let me know if you need to raise your hand. I'm raising mine right now. I'm not sure if that can be seen or not, but once I see it, I will certainly acknowledge and ask you to go forward. And typically, a raised hand comes straight to the forefront, so you won't be left behind. All right, I see no raised hands. Does anyone have questions but can't raise their hand for whatever reason? You're unhandable. Okay. Let's see if we can get the rest of the proponents, and then we're going to get anyone from the opposition. All right. I'm looking for my list of people.
I think Ms. Seinfeld was going to be the next person who was on our list to speak, and I think she has joined us. So.
All right.
Sorry, that was Michael Berlin speaking. Sorry.
Mr. Berlin, thank you. And is it Ms. Seinfeld or Steinfeld?
Seinfeld.
Scheinfeld, I apologize.
The comedian. Okay. Like the comedian.
Would you be kind enough to spell your name and identify yourself for us?
Susan Seinfeld. Seinfeld. Not Field. Spelled.
And Susan is spelled?
Susan.
Thank you.
That's it. No I. Seinfeld.
Okay. And if you have several minutes, we're hoping for in around 5 minutes or so. Ms. Seinfeld.
Yes. Can I? Yes. I am the retired district manager of Community Board 11, which covered Northeast Queens, and in the area where Glen Oaks Volunteer Ambulance Corps is looking to expand their catchment area. And I'm also a resident in Floral Park, Queens, which is part of the Glen Oaks Volunteer Ambulance area. So I'm familiar with them. I just wanted to speak on my experience when I was the district manager. a few times, the other ambulance corps, the Bayside Ambulance Corps, had spoken at the community board, and they did offer programs, and they also were trying very hard to recruit members. And that's going back 5 to 10 years now that they had come and were recruiting. I retired 3 years ago, but before my retirement, it had become known to me that we were unable to get hold of them. And then I was told that they had closed the doors, and it was, very disappointing. I was very pleased when Glen Oaks volunteers applied and said, I heard that they were going to go into that area, because as a resident of the area, I know of their reputation, and our neighbors have used them. I mean, unfortunately haven't had to, but that they have been there. They are a very visible presence in the community. You see their ambulances on calls constantly. They offer training. They've done blood drives, which I've participated in. They've just been very available, and I am hopeful that they will be very available in the Bayside area, because there was certainly a gap in coverage. And after all the wonderful things that Bayside might have done at the time, unfortunately, it seems they couldn't get the recruits to continue. And it was very disappointing. So there's a real gap there, and I support their application for extending their coverage into this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Seinfeld. And do we have any questions of Ms. Seinfeld? Either from the applicant, from the ambulance committee?
Oh, but let me just say, having been the district manager, the lines that you're talking about, there are some weird places in the lines that are drawn that are the community board 11, where you think that maybe they'd be the other community board, but they're not. So, yeah, that would be something you'd have to tweak, whether you follow the CB 11 lines exactly, or you adjust it to make it reasonable for the coverage of the area. Thank you.
Thank you again. Any questions from Ms. Seinfeld? I don't see hands. All right, I'm going to move on to, if I understand correctly, Greco, Louis Greco.
Hi, yes, Louis Greco.
And Mr. Greco, is it spelled Louisgreco?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Thank you.
Good evening. I serve as the Vice Chair of District 4 of the New York State Volunteer and Ambulance Association, and I'm attending tonight's public hearing to speak in favor of Glen Oaks' application to expand their operating territory into the area formerly covered by Bayside Community. Today, volunteer EMS agencies face many challenges and sometimes obstacles. If it's not financial, it has to do with their membership base or EMS provider training and updates. We also must adhere to the community's needs and expectations, as well as organizational leadership development and succession planning. Tonight, I'm pleased to be able to endorse Glen Oaks VAC's expansion application, because it will immediately restore volunteer community EMS services to a community, at no fault of their own, lost that type of coverage. The additional services delivered by Glen Oaks to this area will assist with lowering area EMS response times and permit EMS resources to be at a patient's side quicker. But this is not all that community EMS does. Their service will also be able to provide additional community services such as CPR training and AED training, EMT services to community events, standby services of such that allow them to service the community in needs that are not necessarily met if there's no volunteer ambulance in the area. These additional areas of service are what community EMS is known for. Glen Oaks is a very capable and stable organization with leadership that is competent and experienced. They also are open to new practices, which are extremely important as EMS evolves. This is how they've remained relevant and an active community participant for years, and by expanding into the Bayside area, we'll be able to provide that level of service to that community. In addition, their leadership has demonstrated their commitment to undertaking the important task at hand and has consistently offered their expertise, problem solving, and best practices to those who request it. In a time when many ambulance services are experiencing problems throughout the state, the leaders of Glen Oaks are the same individuals that are called upon to assist other agencies facing difficulties, because that's exactly what they do. They respond to those who are in need. Most community volunteer ambulance agencies need a new formula to achieve long-term stability. Expansion such as what is being requested, along with operational partnerships, mergers, and consolidations, have often been characterized as dirty words in the volunteer sector. But now we need to be able to focus on what is the future of volunteer EMS, should it continue to succeed in our region. I thank all of you for taking the time to hear me out and partake in this process. I look forward to the approval of Glen Oaks expansion application.
Mr. Greco, thank you for your time. I actually have a couple of questions, if I could. Both you and Mr. Earhart may have used almost the same language, and maybe the same language, of a new formula for volunteer ambulance. And again, I'm pleased that we have so many people of interest here tonight who dedicated countless hours in the volunteer ambulance community. But you mentioned a new formula, and you also mentioned, Mr. Greco, that GOVAC would be, I'm going to give a quote, open to new practices, I'm closing my quote. What do you mean by new formula, and what do you mean, if you can speak to what would these new practices be?
So EMS in the volunteer sector has, like the rest of the EMS industry, evolved, but many volunteer agencies have stuck in the mud to the same way that volunteer EMS occurred 10, 20, even sometimes 30 years ago. From everything from pushing along, being progressive from a medical care point of view, to how they retain and recruit their membership. And if you look at their roster and you look at some of the other organizations that are progressively moving forward, and their membership rosters and their availability to be of service to the communities that they serve, it's present, where you see other organizations that may be doing things the same way that they were doing them, like I said, decades previous, but they're losing their membership ranks. They don't have the ability to provide the services to their community. And Glen Oaks has time in and time out showed that they're willing to change the way that they do things. They're willing to address their membership needs, because you're dealing with a volunteer workforce, to address the needs that their members have to keep them engaged. And that's, at the end of the day, why their trucks are on the road, why their trucks are serving the community. And some other agencies, aren't able to do so. And that's something that's really important. I'm not saying that those agencies, other agencies, don't have the ability in the future to do so as well. And I think that's just another step here, as Glen Oaks has been willing to help other agencies along the way. to get their agencies up to snuff to where they need to be to provide the valid services that the communities require.
Thank you. And one further and final question. How long have you been associated with the New York State Volunteer Ambulance and Rescue Association?
I've been the vice chair for this year, and I serve as the president and chief of Park Slope Volunteer Ambulance in Brooklyn for the past 10 years.
Okay.
I've been a member there for approximately 15 years.
Well, thank you for your service and thank you for presence here tonight. Questions from Mr. Greco? I know this is like my 6th grade classroom. No one's raising their hands. Okay, Mr. Greco, thank you very, very much. Let's see. So after Mr. Greco, I believe we have either Joe, am I saying Marziliano? Forgive me, or Miss Eileen Miller from Community Board 11, or either from either present.
My hand raising function doesn't seem to be working, but I believe they're in a meeting tonight with a city agency and couldn't make it.
That was Mr. Earhart. You mentioned, thank you very much, and we did have Ms. Seinfeld, formerly from CB11. I'm going to move on to Charles Silverstein. Is it Silverstein or Silverstein? I apologize either way.
Charles Silverstein is not on the call.
He's not. All right. Thank you. All right. So unless I'm mistaken, that's the list of people who were scheduled to speak on behalf of the application. Members of the public who'd like to speak on behalf will have an opportunity to do so after those who oppose the application have had their time.
Well, the one thing I would say just before, sorry, Michael Berlin, is obviously there's some letters that some of these individuals put in support, and so even though they were not able to be here today, I hope that you'll look at them and obviously you will consider them as they go forward. So,
okay, and Mr. Berlin again, Frank Shorn. What I want to make super clear is that we're taking when I make my recommendation. It is the entirety of everything. There are a number of enumerated factors that have to be considered, and they will in fact be considered by me. You have my promise, and I think I have a fairly good track record of making sure that there will be a comprehensive report considering the information, and the fact that someone is or is not here tonight does not diminish or increase the likelihood of a decision in whatever direction. So don't.
Thank you, and we have full faith. We have full faith, and I didn't mean to imply at all. Otherwise, wanted to note that since they wanted to be here and were unable to, just to particularly point to their letters. But we have full faith.
I want to make sure I'm waving the flag of neutrality of Switzerland right here. That there's absolutely, the fact that someone isn't here, we're not keeping score. It's not Dodgers versus Rays. Congrats to the Dodgers fans. We're going to move on to the opposition. Christopher Capo, I believe, is from Bayside Volunteer. Mr. Capo, are you here tonight?
Yes, I am.
All right, Mr. Capo, I'm going to yield the floor over to you, sir.
Thank you, sir. My name is Chris Capo, C-H-R-I-S. C-A-P as in Peter O. And I am now the current president of the Bayside Community Ambulance Corps. I want to say that, yes, we have lost our operating license, and I feel this is more of a courtesy to me to come on and speak to you. At the present moment, we are restructuring our organization. Because of the previous administration, all this has happened. I have received documents from DOH on their investigation, on the hearing, and so I'm fully aware of what was done and what wasn't done. I'm here today to explain that Glen Oaks is a fine unit. They have roughly 20,000 people in their population. They have 3 ambulances. They have the paramedics. as well. Bayside consists of over 40,000 people, probably close to 50. And so this basically would be doubling their territory. Now, Bayside may not be up and running. I have a building. I have 2 ambulances. And at the present moment, I'm still working with the AG, trying to get my house in order. To give my territory, or once was my territory, to Glen Oaks, I feel is more or less a problem. I don't believe that putting 1 bus in this territory would suffice, since we used to run 2. If they were dispatched from their location, they have to go through highways and congested areas just to get to the center of Bayside. I'm not saying they couldn't do it, nor am I saying they're understaffed. What I'm trying to say is that they would be pulling their community's insurance for this type of work and dropping into Bayside. I feel that if something did happen, and if COVID did come up again, and we know it is, that this bus would be pulled from our neighborhood. I'm trying to get the ambulance corps back up and running. I am working diligently to get all this mess that was left to me in order. I would like the time to get it done and working again. I have support. I have financial support. I do have people that are interested and ready to get involved. I have members from 10 years and back willing to work with me. All I ask is for the time. I will have to resubmit an application in, and while I'm waiting to get this all done, Baycom and Little Neck Douglaston are willing to work with me to cover my area, to help me with my needs, to assist me in whatever I would need to get my ambulance corps back up and running. And again, I do understand what was done by the previous administration, how they were trying to be reached. These people right now are no longer part of our ambulance corps, or no longer part of anything to do with the administration. All I ask is that I have some time, I have the coverage, and I can get this back up and running. I may not have everything that Glen Oaks has right now, but it doesn't mean I can't. If anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to take them.
Mr. Cape, but first of all, apologies for mispronouncing your name.
That's okay.
This is Ford again. Secondly, thank you for your presence here tonight. Thank you for the open and transparent way that you appear to be conducting what probably is a difficult situation under any circumstances. It is not my job to mediate or conciliate. However, it probably would be a nice idea if there may be mediation, conciliation, and coordination among with your organization and GOVAC, and irrespective of the application that's going forward. But that is not my role here tonight, and that's not the role of this process. And I don't mean to be callous or hard-hearted. I mean to be honest and quite literally frank, as I've been for many years. So I may suggest, but that's purely a member of a member of the community, small c, that that you carry on a dialogue should you wish, and should the others wish to dialogue with you, the others being GOVAC and whoever else, that may or may not be able to hopefully achieve better community results. Obviously, you have resources. I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you. Questions for Mr. Capo?
Frank, this is Joe Ranieri. We have Marie DeGlio, who has a statement, And so I hand it to Marie.
Okay, Marie, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Frank. This is Marie Diglio, Remsco. I have to echo what you said. We don't want to be callous, but unfortunately, the COM process as written in Article 30 of the New York State Public Health Law does not allow us to delay or in any way prevent the COM process from going forward. And as I did send a letter to Mr. Capo after speaking with the New York State Department of Health, directing him to direct all these types of questions to the Department of Health. And it really is outside of our purview at this point to delay this process. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Murray. Any other questions for Mr. Capo?
Frank, this is Joseph. We have Edward Gorman who wishes to ask a question.
Mr. Gorman, could you identify yourself, please, and spell your name for the transcription purposes?
Absolutely. Edward Gorman, Gorman, President, Chief of Operations, Queens Village, Belrose Ambulance.
Go ahead, sir.
Just a few questions and maybe a statement. Mr. Capo, do you feel that you would need help from the community to reopen? Do you feel that with the issues that you had in the past that you would be able to handle the community to the best of your ability?
I'll give you a little bit of a background on it. My family has lived in this town for 75 years. My grandfather was one of the original founders of Bayside Volunteer Ambulance Corps. I also have a strong presence within the community with a lot of the business people and also different organizations. So to answer your question, I don't think I'd have a problem working with the community or getting the community support. Right now, I don't need their money. I just need to get everything in order first, and then I can reopen. Also, applying and all the other things needed. I also have Bay Community and Little Neck Douglaston who have reached out to me more times than I can tell you. Glen Oaks has never offered their help to me. Bay Community and also Little Neck have. So I believe I have a good support staff behind me to reopen this ambulance corps. My grandfather started it, and I'd hate to see it go down.
Okay.
I don't mean to jump in. This is Michael Berlin, but I believe that the purpose of the hearing is on our application. This isn't a question of competing applications, one or the other. This is a question of whether or not there's a public need and whether or not Glen Oaks has the resources and the other pieces to do there. I appreciate Mr. Capo's situation, but again, there is no other application. It has been 2 years without any application that's there. That's part of what led to this application being put forward and the resources and the ability to help the community sort of immediately. So,
well, sir, the reason for the question, because my next question was going to lean back over to the GOVAC side.
Mr. Gorman, if you wouldn't mind, I've been advised that you are not a member of the ambulance committee. Are you, sir?
No, sir.
All right, so I'm going to ask. And forgive me, I thought that you might have been, and that's why I let you speak. Could I ask that you hold on to your questions for after the after we go through, and you can make your comments in support of or in opposition to at that point?
Absolutely.
All right, and I don't mean to silence you, but I was advised that I wasn't being 100% following the rules, but it was because I believe that you're a member of the ambulance committee. I don't know all the ambulance committee people. Joe Ranieri, if you could be my filter, because you know the who's who and the personnel on the ambulance committee, could you just help me keep it limited to that for the time being, and then members of the public will be able to ask questions or comment towards the end.
Understood.
I'd like to answer Mr. Berlin's question, if I may.
And I'm sorry, who's that speaking, please?
This is Chris Capo again.
Ms. Capo. Okay, go ahead, sir.
Just very quickly, Mr. Berlin, prior to 2 years ago, there was nobody. Since November, I've been working to get the Corps back up and running, and then took over as president in September. So yes, for the past 2 years, there has been no contact, but now there is contact. Just for your information, if you need to, you can call me. I'll be glad to give you my contact information.
Again, I wasn't really posing a question. I was simply saying that this proceeding is on our application, not a hypothetical application that may happen in the future or one way or another, but I do appreciate your situation.
Okay, thank you. All right, and hope you'll be able to stay around, and we can go back to you once we get the opposition all taken care of, and any concerns addressed. If I understood right, we have Michael Lyons, who is president of Bay Community Volunteer Ambulance. Mr. Lyons, are you here tonight?
Yes, I am.
All right, and Mr. Lyons, could you spell your name for the transcription purposes, please?
Yeah, M-I-K-E, last name L-Y-O-N-S.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I am the president of the Bay Community Volunteer Ambulance Corps, who currently holds the operating certificate for North Bayside. We're here to speak in opposition of the expansion from Glen Oaks as it's currently written. Basically, one of our issues is the community support and the fact that Glen Oaks is not Bayside community based. Their only location is on 25702 Union Turnpike in Glen Oaks. It's a 20-minute drive from its headquarters to most parts of Bayside. And Bayside is primarily a residential neighborhood that has many geographical boundaries blocking direct access from its Glen Oaks headquarters. These includes bodies of waters, park, the Long Island Railroad, all of which limits access to the area from a roadway perspective. The ambulance will need to return to its headquarters frequently for tour changes, equipment resupply, and decom. This will make it more difficult to carry over the response time stated in the application for the new area. Additionally, by removing an ambulance and crew from Glen Oaks' current territory, it is very likely that the response time quoted will in actuality increase. Due to the great distance from the community, Bayside residents won't benefit from any additional services that Glen Oaks offers at its headquarters, as it is not easily accessible via walking, biking, public transportation, or car. Since its operation is not local to the Bayside community, any income from the Bayside operation, which should entirely be going back into the Bayside community, would now be going to subsidize the Glen Oaks community, as it is primarily a Glen Oaks-based organization. After reviewing the application, the support we don't see from the community itself. We don't see a list of letters of support from many individual residents. We don't see Bayside residents making donations for this in support of this expansion. And a lot of the community support that went through the community board and from some of the other people are all have backgrounds with New York Hospital Queens. In the application, they also mentioned that that they might see an increase to the hospital from this expansion. Knowing the Bayside community, we know a lot of the community members here choose a different service than 911 because they primarily want to go out to Northwell Manhasset. So we don't think, as a lifelong Baysider, that that's really truly in the interest of everything for the Bayside community. The other thing is that, there's no other really letters of endorsement from anyone who really surrounds or borders Glen Oaks area today. None of their neighbors support this expansion or have submitted a letter for it. And the community benefits most from a community-based volunteer organization is actually based in the community it's servicing. Public need exists in the expansion. The need would be best served by restoring Bayside VAC. And that's something that we, have and would work and help with and provide our expertise for. The only, it's not the only reason for our opposition, the restoration of Bayside VAC. Should they be unable to restore, we're still opposed to this expansion. In past years, we have been asked and agreed to attend multiple carnivals sponsored by various community associations. We've also made presentations to Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts in the area. And since they border right next to us, logically for the community, we're the choice for them. We have opened up our CPR classes and our first aid classes to residents of the Bayside community, as Bayside was, in dire condition. And we did try, for the last 10 years to work with administrations at Bayside, but they did not want to work with us. No different than, what Glen Oaks maybe, or the district, New York State had reported. Due to these ties to the residents, businesses, and organization with Bayside, we believe that if Bayside VAC is not reinstated, that, Bay community would be ready, willing, and able to apply for an expansion of our territory further into Bayside. We are certain that we'd be better suited than Glen Oaks as we're currently situated to service this community and be able to do it with no negative effects to our current area, supplies, or budget. Glen Oaks says that they're a small volunteer ambulance corps. We're even smaller. So, it's always been something that we've discussed with the years about doing. And really, we would like to work with Bayside really as the first choice to, their headquarters is right in the center of Bayside. It's ideally, it's similar to the way the fire department has firehouses set up in communities, and really it's truly a nice community-based service. And that's all I have to say for now.
Mr. Lyons, thank you very, very much. You raised some information, some points that I'm going to ask the applicant to address at some point a bit later on about the increase in response time to Bayside. And if the applicant would like to address, ask you questions of it, or if we could possibly address the issue of response time, the claim that you're making of a 20-minute drive from, again, that's, as your regular car goes, what would be the response time from Union Turnpike out to Bayside? And clarify again, is there going to be a satellite office set up in Bayside? And is response time going to be unrealistic? And more importantly, from the way I'm thinking right now, could people's lives be put at risk by saying, okay, I'm going to get the volunteer ambulance coming over, but they have such an extended response time that it's even longer than the 9 minutes plus that a Fidney bus would take, or a responding New York City Fidney sponsored bus would take.
Henry, do you want to address that, or how do you want to?
Sure, I can address that.
And I might address a couple of other points, if you don't mind, that were raised after he's done. That was Michael Berlin, sorry.
I can get from this end of Queens to the other end of Queens in 20 minutes, so it's not going to take 20 minutes to get to Bayside. And as I outlined in my testimony, there are a number of modalities that we could conceivably use to address the response time issue. We have members in Bayside. We can equip them as first responders. We can find real estate and locate an ambulance in Bayside. Should the Attorney General determine who actually should be the trustees of the Bayside Volunteer Ambulance Corps, we would certainly be open to working with them and talking about what kind of collaborative effort that we could do to obtain, more members and service in Bayside. I also just want to address that, the interest of people going to North Shore Manhasset Hospital. We deliver there regularly now. So any illusion that we are, not able to take people to North Shore Manhasset is pure nonsense, to be quite frank. I also want to address the fact that Mr. Capo said that Little Neck, Douglaston, and Bay Community are willing and able to serve his area right now. Absolutely not. None of us can serve his area right now because there is no certificate of operation that he holds. That's the problem. That's why there's a need. That's why we're doing this. But you cannot go in there, we cannot go in there, and he cannot authorize anybody to go into that area. That shows a really misunderstanding and lack of knowledge about what's going on here and what the process is, but also what the legal requirements are to run an ambulance service. And that's a very serious matter. I have to raise that because that's a serious issue and it's simply wrong. Also, we did not hear from Mr. Capo until our application was out there. We reached out to who we knew to be the Bayside Volunteer Ambulance Corps many times over the years.
But I just one more point, and I want to go back to this. There is only one application that is in there. I mean, there's been 2 years. There have been 2 years of this period here. We are the ones who are stepping forward. We've put in this application. We have the resources. We do think that this will be a great benefit to the community. And there is community support. I mean, if you look at our submission, you'll see the letters from the elected officials who represent Bayside. And you'll see others who are in the community who do support what's going on there. So again, I know you'll be reviewing the application, but it is in there. And the reason that we're doing this and the reason that we think it's so important is that there is no service there right now. We are the ones who are ready to do this. There is nothing else. There are no other applications despite over 2 years of not having the service here. And the reason that we have chosen to do this is that we believe that it will be a benefit to the community. And we feel very strongly about that.
Okay, that was Mr. Berlin.
Sorry, Mr. Berlin again. Sorry.
And Mr. Hart before that. This is Sean again. Just so we're super clear again, Mr. Earhart, we're not passing on whether another organization would or would not be as good or better. Is there a need for the services that GOVAC would provide in the Bayside area? So we're not balancing like who's better, who would be better. We've got exactly one application over here, and that's all we have. Now, again,
we believe
outside this process, please allow me to finish.
Oh, sorry, I thought you did.
Nope. I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Hart, and I'll let you know when I'm done. So
thank you.
You're very welcome. So what this process is looking at this application, and should there be some, whether you want to talk or don't want to talk with other groups, whether you want to do something at some later point in time, is outside this process. It may be good community eventually, but we're looking at things on October 28th, 2020, and this is what we got right now. And it may be suboptimal. I'm clearly living in suboptimal times, as we may all are with the COVID dilemma, putting it mildly, among other things. So we're dealing with the cards that we have on the table, including the application that we have presented before us, good, bad, or ugly, but that's what we have to deal with. And I'm going to remind us, as we said, and Mr. Hart, you may not have been here when I began, but you've been at other hearings where I've been. Please let's keep this not personal, and please let's keep this how we can be the best possible people in providing ambulance services, as I know is the underlying intent of almost everyone here in this hearing tonight. Ms. Earhart, I'm going to go back to you now.
Thank you, and I appreciate that, and no malintent was intended, nor was there any personality, no attempts to personally impugn anybody or anything like that. We are we do believe there is a need. We do believe we are well positioned to meet that need. As I have said and said in my testimony and have said in many other forums, we're open to working with our neighboring agencies on joint ventures, enhancements of mutual aid, and collaborative efforts and arrangements to achieve the goal of improving volunteer EMS system and the volunteer EMS sector in Northeast Queens.
All right. I thank you very much. And sometimes we all get a little bit passionate about this, and I think that just may show how committed we are to this process and helping people. Any other questions for Mr. Lyons? From the ambulance committee? If not, I'm going to move on to Joseph Heffernan.
Frank, you did have some hands up from
I did
committee
not
members Sean Graves and Travis Kessler.
That's why you're there, Joe. Help me out. Was it Mr. Graves who was first?
Correct.
Mr. Graves, I apologize. And I'm going to turn it over to you, please.
Sure. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Sean Graves. I'm a member of the New York City Municipal Board. I just wanted to, I had raised my hand before that explanation was given by Mr. Earhart, so I do appreciate his clarification on some of the deployment matrix questions that were posed. However, I guess from that, I just would like to make a note that it is pretty usual and customary for ambulance services, whether they're commercial, private, or municipal, to have a very common ambulance deployment matrix of having a headquarters in one place and ambulances in others. So I don't necessarily understand how that would impact the applicant's efforts. And I did raise my hand before Mr. Earhart did clarify that, so I do appreciate that, and I just had that comment.
All right, Mr. Graves, thank you. And I apologize, Joe Ranieri, if I could ask you, normally I would see hands raised at would come to the forefront of the people present on a Zoom call. That's not happening. So can you please be my aide de camp, if you will, and let me know who's got hands up?
Understood. The other individual that had their hand up, although he did lower it, was Travis Kessel, who is a member of the committee. And then you have Joseph Heffernan, who I believe is just waiting for his assigned moment to speak.
Okay. And the second the person that you said had his hand up but raised it, could you mention that person? And if you'd like to still speak, we'd love to hear you.
That individual's name was Travis Kessel.
Mr. Kessel.
Hi, all. This is Travis Kessel. At this time, I'm going to opt out of speaking. Thank you, though.
Thank you anyway. And I think I'm going on to Mr. Heffernan.
Correct.
Okay, Mr. Heffernan, could you identify yourself and spell your last name? Spell your first and last names, please.
It's Joseph, Joseph, Heffernan, Hefffernan.
Thank you, sir. Go right ahead.
My name is Joseph Heffernan. I was a member of the Bayside Village Ambulance Corps for over 10 years. I would like to give you a little history about the Corps and the member of the Corps. The Bayside Village has been around since 1955. And they're members that have served the community, not just individuals, but families. We have the Lapernas and their children, the Debreckis, Bill and Bobby, the Myers and their 3 children that grew up in our building. My family, my father, who served Joe Sr., who served the community for over 50 years as president and others and other jobs. All right. Mr. Capo, his grandfather was the founder. My mother was a member of the Bayside Ambulance, my cousin. I even met my wife at the Bayside Volunteer Ambulance Corps. generations of families passed through our doors, helping the community that they lived in. Now this is being taken from this next generation of corp families. Our previous administration dropped the ball. They will say they tried, but the truth is that they dropped it to the community and the EMS community. But because of persons of the several of the corps became prior to reach out to past members and begin the reconstruction of the Bayside Ambulance Corps. Our new administration will not drop the ball. We have members that will hold the leadership accountable. We have truly started an e-board and everything that we need to have. While trying to get our house in
You
order.
gotta move the paper. We can't see your face.
Okay.
There you go.
Well, I'm reading off what I sent I already sent this over to you, so you do have it.
Thank you.
But I'm trying to read it at the same time. And trying to get our house in order, we were informed that Glen Oaks was making a play for the Bayside Territory. To give the Bayside Territory to Glen Oaks would be a big mistake, since they're too far away. Our own community would be losing out. Let the Bayside come back and serve their own community. Even the local corps that surround us are willing to give us any type of assistance to get Bayside up and running. The only corps that has it is Glen Oaks. If you don't want to have Bayside back, I'd give Bay community, because they could serve the community, the Bayside community, with good response times. With Fidney laying off 400 personnel, and we need more volunteer corps. Giving larger areas to corps is not an option. Please give Bayside a chance. Thank you for letting me speak in this important matter.
Mr.
Yes.
Heffernan, thank you very, very much. I want to make a couple comments. First of all, this is for the transcription. When you mention corpse, I know what you mean. This is for the transcription. It's CORPS, and sometimes it's pronounced corpse, and sometimes it's pronounced core. But just for for English speaking purposes, for transcription purposes, when you said it, you meant like an ambulance corps, CORPS. Am I right?
Yes.
Awesome. Secondly, I just need to say thank you on behalf of everyone in communities throughout New York City for the service that people like you, your families, generations extending past, who've spent countless hours, don't get enough credit in providing time and effort to volunteer ambulance organizations. And like it or not, raising families and changes in life and employment, sometimes things have to go, and sometimes commitment to organizations like this, which are very time intensive and emotionally draining at times, but it's so rewarding as we all know. Things fall by the side, and for whatever has happened, that left Bayside not being able to to operate and operating certificate being gone. It is what it is, and we're now moving forward to see what can happen with the application present here. But I just need to make sure that I'm saying thank you to you for the service that you and everyone who has formerly been with Bayside Volunteer Ambulance and all the ambulance squads for the unsung, unrecognized, but life-saving efforts that you've done throughout the not just years but decades. It's beyond the scope of my role here, but since I get to do this, I think I have to give you that thank you, and hopefully you've had many happy years, and hopefully a very happy marriage. Seems like a very active dog over there too. So
Yes, I
congrats to
have
you.
5 of them.
God bless you. Five dogs and one wife, or 5 wives and one? No. Forgive
No,
me.
I got I got 5 dogs,
so,
1 wife, and children.
Okay.
But
so again,
I
forgive
just
me.
I just worry about the Bayside community in a whole, and that's why I'm opposed to this. Is because they're just too far away. I know what Glen Oaks is. I grew up. I had friends that rode for Glen Oaks. I have no ill feelings to Glen Oaks, but logistically, it just won't work.
And that's an issue that needs to be addressed. And you may have identified one of the key issues that's already been addressed, raised by you, raised by others, responded to by the applicant, Glen Oaks, and ultimately is probably going to be one of the decisions that the ambulance committee and the regional council will. I'm going to take a flyer on this one that they're going to be looking at much more carefully. So thank you for
it's because Glen Oaks only borders.
Joe, I think you muted yourself. Joe, you muted yourself. There you go. Nope, still mute. There we go.
Yeah, that Glen Oaks only borders Bayside in a quarter mile. Within a quarter mile. Otherwise, Glen Oaks does not border Bayside. Where Bay
Thank you.
Community and Little Neck Douglaston border a lot bigger borders with Bayside than Glen Oaks. They're operating where they're operating now.
Questions from Mr. Heffernan? Joe, if you can guide me through. Great.
Yes, Frank. So you have hands up. You have a hand up from Scott Orlansky, who is a community member. So he has a question, and you can recognize him.
All right. As a matter of policy, I'm allowed to ask 4 questions from the ambulance committee. Am I right? And then community later on, or I know Scott is known to many of us, and I don't mean to be rude, but I just don't want to violate rules for one, but not for another person.
Scott is a member of the committee.
Okay, he is ambulance committee.
Yes.
I heard community. I apologize, Scott. My apologies. Go right ahead.
No apologies necessary. I don't so much as have a question as just hope and pray that I don't get divorced tonight for being on this for so long. I just want to sort of make sure that we're staying on point here. Right now, to the best of my knowledge, we have an application for expansion from Glen Oaks. There is no application, sadly or not sadly. I spent many fun times with Bobby Dubrocki when I was at Flushing Volleys in the early 90s. But unfortunately, we don't have an open application from Bayside, and we don't have an open application from Bay Community as to whether or not they can or can't take over. We only have in front of us an application from Glen Oaks. And so I think that it's important that we keep this hearing focused on the positive and negatives of the application and not any other crews as we have done, unfortunately, in past application, not any other agencies, since there are no other open applications right now. So I'm just respectfully requesting, I think for everybody here, that we stay focused on Glen Oaks, on the need presented in their application, and that we are able to judge and review the facts or the opinions or the materials that they presented as such. I'm done.
Scott, point well taken. Thank you. Joe.
Yes, I would like to answer Scott's thing, but we are talking about a community here. We're not talking about this.
Hold on, Mr.
Public hearing
Heffernan.
is about a community that needs to be served.
Frank, I muted Mr. Heffernan because he was not recognized by you.
Okay. And when I said Joe, I was putting it back to Joe Ranieri. I apologize, Joe. Mr. Heffernan, I apologize. If I could, and I know the time is late, and we scheduled this until 8 o'clock. I think it's important that we continue this, and I'm going to. But I want to stay focused as Scott just indicated, and keep the focus on the application in chief over here. And is there anything that we haven't already said, Mr. Heffernan, that you still need to share with us? If so, please let me know, and let me give you that opportunity.
The only thing that I was saying was the thing I was talking about was the Bayside community, not just the ambulance corps, it was the community, how it's going to be served.
Okay.
And that's and that should be part of this meeting, because that would be part of how they turn around and be able to service that area.
And those points have been raised, and I'm not minimizing the least bit. I can tell you that it's going to be considered, and points that you spoke of. So you definitely have been heard, and those points will definitely be addressed in my report. And again, I thank you for raising those points. Okay, Mr. Joe Ranieri.
Okay, I saw Travis Kessel from the committee had raised his hand and then lowered it. And then you have one community member, Mr. Paul Mai, with his hand raised.
All right, ambulance committee?
No, Paul Mai is a community member. Travis Kessel had his hand raised. He is a committee member.
All right, Mr. Kessel, I'm going to go to you. Community members, I'm going to ask to wait until we have, I think there's one further possible scheduled speaker after Mr. Heffernan. But Mr. Kessel, you have a question. If you do, please, we'd love to hear from you tonight.
Hi, Mr. Sean, Travis Kessel. Travis, TRAVIS KESSEL. I believe I think that may have been a issue with the raising from earlier, but I just wanted, as a Bayside resident, any member of Glen Oaks, the reason I joined Glen Oaks was the Bayside and Bayside adjacent ambulance corps didn't answer calls when applications were put in. And that's how I wound up with Glen Oaks. And they're the only one consistently who serviced any part of the Northeast Queens area over the last 10 to 15 years.
All right, thank you, sir. And I believe we have another person, Una Kim, who is, I believe, listed as president of Little Neck Douglaston Volunteer Ambulance.
She's not there. I don't believe she's here.
Okay.
Hi,
All
good evening. Una Kim was unable to make it tonight. Paul Mai, I'm speaking on behalf of Little Neck Douglaston.
So Mr. Mai, would you like to speak on in her place?
Yes, please.
Okay, and if you could just spell your name for transcription purposes, and you're welcome here tonight, sir.
Paul Mai, Paul, last name Mai, Mai. Hi, good evening, everyone. Like I said earlier, I'm speaking on behalf of Una Kim and the president of Little Neck Douglaston Community Ambulance Corps. We are speaking in opposition for this expansion of Glen Oaks into Bayside. I'm going to keep this short and straight to the point. One, the extended response times. Glen Oaks headquarters right now currently located on Union Turnpike to Bayside. Not only is not adjacent neighboring town, but would cut through either Little Neck, Douglaston, or Jamaica Estates to reach the destination of Bayside, which all already have active operating certificates. With the extended response times and potentially dangerous emergency response only to be canceled by either a FDNY municipality or volunteer units already stationed and posted in the Bayside area. I see that the benefits do not outweigh the risk. Secondly, like Mr. Lyons stated earlier, we don't see any endorsements from residents or businesses of Bayside supporting the need for this expansion from Glen Oaks. I do have a question for Govak. Is this servicing expansion going to be ALS or a BLS service only?
And I'm happy to have that question answered, Mr. Mai. Mr. Earhart, were you present for that question? And or
Yes.
Mr. Go ahead, Mr. Earhart.
All right, go ahead.
We are an authorized ALS service provider. Began our ALS service in March, and we would obviously provide an equivalent level of service throughout our service territory.
And I'd like to just answer one thing. I mean, we don't respond from our headquarters, and we do cover Bayside. So I'm not sure that I understand sort of some of the comments or the other things that have been put forward. It doesn't seem to be matching either the current situation or what is being proposed here. But
I'm just reiterating from your application. You stated you are an ALS ambulance service. Would that be ALS servicing the community of Bayside?
We would
That was
service,
Ms.
we would provide equivalent service throughout our service area.
This is Mr. Shorn. Mr. Earhart, how many ALS buses do you have?
Right now we have approximately 10 paramedics. We are obviously open to receiving more. We have one of our ambulances fully fitted out as ALS, and we have available 2 ALS personnel in the headquarters, readily available equipment that they can easily access and put on any of our other ambulances.
Okay, so from what I'm hearing, your one ALS ambulance would only be covering either Glen Oaks area or the proposed expansion of Bayside, correct?
No, we have one ambulance that's fully fitted out. We have accessible resources that can be quickly deployed on any of our other 2 ambulances. So we have the capability of equipping other ambulances with ALS equipment in a moment's notice.
Okay, thank you. That answered my question. Just to wrap it up, lastly, just to speak, Little Neck Douglaston does not see the need for this expansion. The benefits of this expansion do not outweigh the risks due to the reasons I stated earlier. Thank you.
Mr. Mai, thank you. Joe and Ari, questions for Mr. Mai?
I do not see any hands raised at the moment, other than Marie DeGlio's.
Okay, Marie.
That's okay. I'll bring this up at the end. I was just going to affirm what Mr. Orlansky had stated, that there is one application being discussed right now, and we need to focus on that one application and deciding whether they are competent and fit, and if there is a need for this expansion.
Okay, and again, that's something that I clearly recognize and am required to focus on. So I know that that's the end of the scheduled speakers, but this is a public hearing, and I'd like to open the floor up to other people who have interest in support of or in opposition to the application. And if you could just raise your hand so you can request that you would speak. Please wait till you get recognized. and then identify yourself. And if you're part of any community organization, or if you're just speaking as a concerned member of the community, identify yourself as well. And Joe Ranieri, I'm relying on you.
Understood. So to reiterate, if you are on the Zoom application, you can use the raise hand function by looking underneath the more option. If you are dialing in on phone, to raise your hand is *9, to unmute yourself is *6. And if you have any difficulties doing either of those, you may certainly put a message in the chat and I will recognize you through that as well. Okay, the only hand or indication to speak I've received is from Mr. Edward Gorman again.
Okay, Mr. Gorman. The floor is yours, sir.
Yes, good evening. Okay, so it goes back to the questions I was asking before. I have a question for Mr. Arnhart. A few questions. Can you break down your boundaries for me again? I was a little confused on the boundaries of GOVAC. The current boundaries.
And we will note that it is part of the application. But if Mr. Earhart, you can give without going block by block, give us some broad strokes. And if there's a particular concern that you have, Mr. Gorman, that you're looking to focus in on, please let us know so we can address that.
All right, thank you.
Sure. Essentially, we cover Glen Oaks and Floral Park in the eastern portion of Queens along the Queens-Nassau border. We then cover the area north of Union Turnpike going west to Oakland Gardens, then going north to the Long Island Expressway, which is where we meet the current Bayside Community Volunteer, past Bayside Community Volunteer ambulance border.
What exactly does your certificate says? Does it say the same thing that you're stating right now?
Well, the certificate lists the broader communities. There's also a map that we have had on file since inception with the New York State Department of Health, which basically mirrors what I just said.
Can I ask what this has to do with the application?
It does. What it has to do with the application is if they're fit to cover the Bayside territory. The reason I ask these questions is because, again, I'm the president and chief of operations of Belrose Ambulance, Queens Village, and there's been numerous amount of times that they have responded to calls exactly to Building 40, Creedmoor, numerous amount of times. I'm trying to find out exactly what their certificate says. They sent out a letter stating areas that they cover when it's a fund drive letter, but it does not have anything to say with their certificate. And I would like to get clarification on where they're from.
Yeah, wait, Henry, wait 1 second. Sorry, I think Marie wanted to jump in.
Sure.
Hi, Marie Diglio. A copy of the certificate is in the application. Would you like us to put it up on the screen?
Could you do that for me, please?
Sure.
Joe, can you put it up? It was, I sent you the link.
Marie, Scott Orlansky, just before we do that, as the resident cartographer and the director of the mapping tag, I just what does this have to do with anything? If GOVAC is operating outside of their certificate of need currently, then a complaint needs to be lodged with the Department of Health, Bureau of EMS, and it has nothing to do with this hearing.
You're absolutely correct. And there's nothing in Article 30 that requires expansion to be to a territory that is contiguous with the current territory. So really, there is no basis for this question in this hearing. You should direct your complaints to the Department of Health.
If they're competent and fit to cover another area. They're stating that they cover this, the breakdown at the end of the day is that they're stating that they cover an area that they don't in fact cover, so which makes that there's questions on that. And then my second question is that they're saying that they could possibly outfit another vehicle to cover Bayside, but there's no proof that they could do that. So they're going to drive, let's just say, from Building 40 of Creedmoor to go all the way to Bayside. That's going to take a little bit of time in traffic to only delay patient care. If we're talking about a community that needs help, how are they going to be going from an area that they do not cover to a new area that they do cover? And yet they're going to be driving lights and sirens across town when there could be a FDNY assigned ambulance only 9 minutes away. It doesn't make sense to me, and that's why I'm asking these questions.
I think we've answered.
Hey,
those
Henry, wait a
last
second.
time.
Mr. Short, does he have to answer that? I mean, that didn't seem like that was a question or is relevant at all to the application that's here.
So I don't think anyone has to answer any question. I will, again, refocus ourselves. Let's assuming that there were some, that there were violations that are being alleged. Those are just statements being made at this point. But I'm between us. If it's not in the application, there's nothing that I can really do in giving recognition to any of those complaints that are just now being brought up at this point in time. So
not really so much of a complaint. I'm trying to get.
Right, but if there were a filed complaint and that was something which had been filed, that would be one thing, but we're not even talking about that. I would just say our approved map area is what was.
Frank, I've muted everyone so that you can determine who wants to speak next.
Frank, unmute yourself if you're speaking.
Okay, now I've unmuted myself. Thank you, Joe. If there were transgressions, if there were violations, that is an issue beyond what we have here tonight. Had there been complaints, they should have been included in opposition. My understanding from my review that complaints or charges being raised by Mr. Gorman, even if, and I'm not saying that they are, even if they were valid, they don't appear from my review, unless I missed something, to have been included in the application. And from that standpoint, the process that I'm going to be reviewing is limited to the documentation that's presented. If I were to introduce and accept new information, new evidence, I will be faulted for having done so, because the application is the application, and the application is complete, including opposition materials, and that has not, as I understand, been included as so far. So even if valid, Mr. Gorman, and I take your, I take your point, but it's not something that I would be able to act on. That's not saying that you're not right. That's not saying that you don't have other venues and forum for to act on it, but it's beyond what we can do here this evening. And if there are other points beyond that, and I'd like to hear it, but I do want to kind of move things just along just a little bit, and give time for conclusions. Again, I've not made up my mind. But there are things that I can't listen to, and new evidence happens to be some of it. And looks like, Mr. Gorman, you'd be presenting something that would be new evidence. I would even mention the word hearsay. Whoops, I just mentioned hearsay. So it's not going to count for a whole lot of beans right now. But it's just not the right time and place. I don't mean to be rude, but it's just not the right time and place. Joe, any other people from the committee that wish to speak?
There are no hands raised at this moment from community members or committee members.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to ask if anyone has something further. Otherwise, I'm going to open up to Mr. Berlin. If you'd like to, I think you've asked to kind of give a conclusion to the hearing, the statement. And if not hearing anyone else, I'm going to turn things over to you, Mr. Berlin.
Thank you very much. And by the way, I apologize if I jumped in there before I was recognized. I do apologize about that. So as I've listened to all the testimony, there does seem to be one point of agreement that there is a public need for a volunteer ambulance corps in this community. I haven't heard anybody oppose that or say that there isn't a need for it here. And for the last 2+ years, no certified volunteer ambulance corps has been there to serve the community. This has left 40,000 residents without the optimal service they're entitled to. Also, I haven't heard anyone question whether the Glen Oaks Volunteer Ambulance Corps is qualified, whether it has the experience, almost 50 years, whether they have the resources with its 70+ EMTs, 10 paramedics, 30+ dispatchers, 24 youth squad members to fill this need. More than that, the organization has shown repeatedly that it is a positive force for any community it is a part of, through its active involvement in many, many ways. And I urge you to look at the application where those are detailed. Look, the other thing is that these services are going to be provided with no additional cost to the community. It is a win-win in every way for the community that has had to suffer for 2 years of not having this type of ambulance service to help them. There's just simply no reason, as I look at the application or otherwise, why under the standards that are to be applied here, and we've heard a lot of sort of extraneous things that haven't looked at the standards here tonight, but there's no reason that I feel that the approval should not be granted. There's no reason why the community should not have these services. There are a number of people who have talked about potential ideas that they would step in or potential that they would fill a gap or that they would like to. But the fact of the matter is that for 2 years, no one else has applied. And we are here now trying to rectify this situation, not in some hypothetical basis, not in the idea that this may happen or if something happens, we may choose to do this. The fact is that the Glen Oaks Volunteer Ambulance Corps wants to do this, is committed to do this, and has worked very hard to do this. And they want to be part of that community as they go forward. I think that if you look at their application, they have talked about their plans to post in the community and to get a facility there. I think it is certainly valid to look at response times and other things, but I think if you look at our application and you look at the actual map and the actual distance, you'll see that this will dramatically cut response times and will be a boon to the community. And that's all I really have to say. So I hope you'll consider it carefully, as I know you will. And we certainly appreciate your taking so much time on this very, very important issue.
Well, I'm going to give the thanks back to everyone in the Zoom room for, again, your time, your effort, your passion. And again, I coming from a volunteer ambulance background myself, you're talking, we're preaching to the converted, and if we kind of see things differently, we don't see it all that differently. We're looking for the best that we can for the people in whatever communities that we're talking about. So I'm gratified that we have that amount of community support. And again, thanks to all of you who've been doing this as profession or just as a passion, without ever having gotten a nickel from doing EMS work. My personal thanks. I'm going to be doing I'll do my darndest. All I can try is my best in getting a fair, unbiased recommendation to the ambulance committee and then to the regional EMS council. I do see Dr. Lansam there, and I just want to acknowledge and thank him for his many years and thank him for his presence here tonight. As for other members of the regional council who I did not recognize, and please forgive me for that, and thank you for everyone here this evening. I want to bring it back to for the final words to Marie before I say the words. The hearing is closed and the record is complete. But I'm going to turn it back to Marie Diglio, and thanks to Joe Ranieri. Thank you to the REMSCO staff that helps over here. Thank you, Scott. And thank you most importantly to our transcriber for your patience and listening to all us talking heads, literally talking heads.
Frank, just to be advised, I have Henry Earhart who wishes to speak, as well as Allison Burke. Not sure if you were
Okay.
still accepting comments.
As long as they're short.
Very quick for me, I promise.
Okay, and Ms. Burke, you're with which organization, please?
Frank, thank you very much. First of all, my name's Allison Burke. I'm from the Greater New York Hospital Association. My members participate both in the 911 system with Fidney and also have ambulance agencies that operate for critical care, transport, and other reasons within their communities and their organizations. This has been really an interesting conversation. Pre-COVID, it probably would have been different, although not much different. And I think we've all learned that there is plenty of opportunity to serve our communities. Everybody looking to have a footprint in the EMS world and to make it to patients calling a service, whether it's 911, a volunteer organization, or a call number through some other vehicle, we all have plenty of opportunity. I think we have made a lot of progress over the years and more recently over the pandemic to realize how we coordinate our sparse resources and not highly funded resources. But I would love to see us work more together to serve our communities. And I think we all have the same goal. I'm gonna put myself on mute because I have animals barking.
Thank you, Ms. Burke, again for your support and for your wisdom. Mr. Earhart, you have, I think, the penultimate or anti-penultimate word tonight.
Just, I tried to explain in my opening testimony a little bit about community boundaries and zip codes and how things, zip codes don't necessarily follow political lines here out in Eastern Queens. We're happy to clarify any of that for the regional council that you need clarified. Our Oakland Gardens area directly borders on Bayside. We have always served since our inception, as our map shows, and we haven't changed anything north of Union Turnpike in that area, going from Oakland Gardens to the Glen Oaks area. But let's put that aside. We can deal with that in another way. I just really wanted to express my thanks to you, the members of the Ambulance Committee and Council, who I know spend countless hours, in addition to all the other things they do, working on, bettering the EMS system in New York City. I also want to extend my thanks and appreciation to people like Mike Lyons, who takes the time out to lead a community volunteer ambulance corps in his area. That is as those of us who do know, a daunting and very time-consuming task today. And he and everybody else who does that has my respect and appreciation. And regardless of where, whatever disagreement we have today, I think we all agree that we want the system to work better. We're prepared to work with our neighbors to do that moving forward today and tomorrow, and regardless of what happens. So I just wanted to express that appreciation to everybody, and thanks.
Thank you very much. Marie, do you and/or your cat have something to say?
Zoe wanted to join the meeting, so no, I have nothing to say. If you're ready to close up, then I will just give some final remarks.
Declare that the formal hearing is concluded. The material that we had, the public hearing has been completed. The public hearing part is done. And I will proceed and give a report to the ambulance committee through the regional council.
That's it. And the hearing officer's report will be transmitted to the ambulance committee members and regional council members in plenty of time for their review prior to our meeting on November 17th, when the formal vote will take place. And unless anyone else has anything else to add, we can close this public hearing.
Maria, I'm gonna have one thing. If there's any need to submit any further clarification, could you please alert the regional council? Just don't send it, let them that you're going to be sending it, and so it can be included in whatever materials that I'm going to look at. It'll be a reasonable amount of time. We can't look at new materials, but we can look at clarifications of existing content in your application.
And you can send any of that information directly to me at mdiglio@nycremsco.org.
So with that, I will end the live feed. Know that this meeting has been recorded and is available on the Remsco YouTube page for those who wish to take the time to rewatch the proceedings, which I know you all would love to do.
And thank you, Frank, for serving as our hearing officer again. And thanks to all members of the Regional Council and Ambulance Committee and Regional Council staff for participating so we can have an educated vote next month. All right, good night.